Hey everyone, welcome to our last reading of Midnight and the Moon by Mary Pope Osborne, and we're going to read Chapter 9, Morgan.
Thank you, Morgan said softly. You have freed me from the magician's spell.
Jack just stared at her. You were Peanut? Annie said. Morgan nodded and smiled. Really? You were with us the whole time? Said Jack. On all of our missions? Morgan nodded again. Why did we have to go on this mission to find a mouse, said Jack, if you were already with us? To break the spell. We had to be on the moon, said Morgan. You could have broken it the minute we arrived. Oh, that's what you were trying to say, said Annie. We didn't have to leave the moon base at all. Morgan nodded and smiled. But the moon man came along to help us, said Annie. He drew a constellation of a mouse. Is he a friend of yours? Morgan shrugged. Let's just say we had a little talk. He stopped by the moon base while you were out. The same way you had a talk with the ninja master, right? Said Jack. And the monkey and the sorcerer. Ooh, doesn't that make you want to go read those 3 books? It makes me want to read them and find out what happened. Morgan nodded. I always squeak to the ones who helped you. Okay, so what are you picturing? What are you visualizing that Morgan Le Fay looks like? Okay, let's see if it's close. But how did they understand you? A mouse, said Jack. Morgan smiled again. Certain wise ones understand the language of little critters, she said. I bet it was you who turned the pages of the book, said Annie, to show us where to go next. Morgan nodded. But who turned you into a mouse? Said Annie. Morgan frowned. A certain person who likes to play tricks on me. His name is Merlin. Merlin, said Jack, the greatest magician that ever lived? Morgan sniffed. He's not that great, she said. He doesn't even know I have 2 brave friends who help me. Us? Said Annie. Morgan nodded. And I thank you both from the bottom of my heart. You're welcome, said Jack and Annie. Morgan handed Annie the Pennsylvania book. Are you ready to go home now? She asked. Yes, said Jack and Annie. Annie pointed to the picture of the Frog Creek woods. I wish we could go there, she said. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster and faster, and then everything was still. Absolutely still. But only for a moment. And chapter 10 is called Earth Life. The midnight woods woke up. A breeze rustled the leaves. An owl hooted. The sounds were soft but very alive. Jack opened his eyes. He pushed his glasses into place. He smiled. Morgan was still with them. He could see her in the moonlight. Her long white hair was shining. Morgan, can you and the treehouse stay here? Said Annie. In Frog Creek? No, I must leave again, I'm afraid, said Morgan. I've been gone from Camelot for a long time. She handed Jack his pack. She brushed his cheek. Her hand felt soft and cool. A bit of moon dust still on you, she said. Thank you, Jack, for your great love of knowledge. You're welcome, said Jack. Morgan tugged on one of Annie's braids. And thank you, Annie, for your belief in the impossible. You're welcome, said Annie. Go home now, said Morgan. Jack smiled. Home was Earth, that bright, colorful world where everything was alive and always changing. Bye, Morgan, said Annie. She started out of the treehouse. Jack looked back at Morgan. Will you come back soon? He said. Anything can happen, said Morgan. The universe is filled with wonders, isn't it, Jack? He smiled and nodded. Go now, Morgan said. Jack followed Annie down the rope ladder. He stepped onto the ground. The wind started to blow. The trees started to shake. A loud roar filled Jack's ears. He squeezed his eyes shut. He covered his ears. Then everything was silent and still. Jack opened his eyes. The ladder was gone. He looked through the leaves and branches of the giant oak tree. Where the tree house had been was only moonlight now. Bye, Morgan, he whispered sadly. Bye, Peanut, said Annie. Jack and Annie stared at the top of the tree for a long moment. Ready? Said Annie. Jack nodded. They started for home. The midnight air felt cool and moist. It was filled with the soft sounds of earth life. Jack and Annie left the Frog Creek woods. They started down the street. Annie glanced up at the sky. The moon looks really far away, doesn't it? It did, thought Jack. It was. I wonder how the Moon Man can be up there all alone, said Annie. What do you mean? Asked Jack. I mean, who helps him put on a spacesuit, said Annie. Who helps him get up when he falls down? And who is he? Said Jack. Who do you think he was? Said Annie. He must be a scientist or an astronaut from Earth, said Jack. Nope, I think he's an alien from another galaxy, said Annie. Jack laughed. What makes you say that? Nothing, I just feel it, said Annie. Wrong, said Jack. There's no proof that aliens exist. Maybe not now, but don't forget, we were in the future. Oh, brother, said Jack. They crossed their yard and climbed the back steps. Annie tiptoed inside the house, and Jack followed her. Before he shut the door, he glanced up at the moon. Was Annie right? He wondered. Could the Moon Man have come from another galaxy? Morgan's words came back to him. The universe is filled with wonders, isn't it, Jack? Good night, Moon Man, Jack whispered, and then he closed the door. And that is the end of Magic Tree House number 8, Midnight on the Moon. If this is a book that you liked, there are tons and tons of more of these and different topics that you can learn about other things than the moon. So think about a topic you would like to know, maybe about history or science, and see if you could find a Magic Tree House book about it. Thanks for reading. Bye.